Because if you go into the centre of London and you start jamming the 3G signal, various points around the city, around the financial district, pretty certain you'll get picked up very quickly if they could catch you, because that area is so reliant on mobile communications. And now if we go forward 7 years and think about the fact that effectively you're just completely reliant on that, you've got very high speed mobile communications which allow you to work anywhere you like, but your whole economy is completely reliant on that infrastructure, and now you've got a group of disaffected people who can't get into that economy, but have the capability to completely disrupt it, and do start disrupting it. That creates an interesting government incentive then to try and tackle that problem.
I think that to really understand the problem, we've got to look at it from what could be the perspective of the young people, particularly in secondary school. And I think that it's like in line with what you were saying, Marty, about you've got those different areas and one of them is social. I think the social side to this, in my own experience at school and experience in workshops, is perhaps the biggest part. Because actually, from the perspective of many young people, all that really matters is your own world, and that world is very much the grounds of the school. Like, there were so many people in my class that all you really cared about was getting through the next 5 years, and that's all that mattered. We weren't told how important jobs were. We weren't told why we were at school. It's just somewhere you had to go, and no one really understood why. And it was only really the kids with the parents that took the time to explain that they actually got it, and that wasn't that common.
Where were you in school?
In a comprehensive in the Midlands.
Okay.
So, I think that actually the things that started to matter more than anything, it wasn't about money, it wasn't about jobs or politics or anything, it was about socially getting through the next 5 years. And actually there was a strive, I'd say, across all of the people that I was really in the class with, is that you strive to be at the top of your social sort of ranking, if you like. The class didn't really matter. It was, am I the coolest kid in the year? Though cool's not the right word, but do you know what I mean? It was like, am I going to stand out? And actually, I wonder if a lot of the digital problems that are now we're becoming aware of, such as sexting, screen munching.
What's screen munching?
It's where you get... So imagine if you've been texting... so if I was texting someone in my year at school and tried to lead them to say a certain thing, try and provoke a certain reaction, like, it might be of a sexual nature or something like that.
So it's a private BB message.
And then when I've received that, I then screen grab it, which is really easy to do on like an iPhone or something like that, or I'm sure on BlackBerry as well. But then you send that round to all the other peers in your year, and you say, look, this person, this girl, has said this thing, and there's her name at the top of that feed. So there's a real sort of live implication, and it's actually through those commonly males who are trying to humiliate girls or try and get a social advantage over everyone else that I think it's quite a big part of the problem.
Because it makes it so much easier for them. I mean, a school kid 20 or 30 years ago, really, what is the damage that they could do? What is the threat? There was really very, very little threat, because you're kept at school, you're kept in this education system, it sort of kept you busy, exhausted you, and that sort of was enough. You couldn't really connect outside of your town, and or even really your school. So and even your year group, you weren't really connected to even the younger or the older kids in your school. So you had this very small world between your family and your sort of friends from your class or your year group. But now that's changed so drastically.
I mean, it kind of gives you more incentive to rebel and escape because it is so closed, and it gives you new tools to make trouble. It's kind of like, I think, what would we have done when we were 10 if we were...
Amazing fun.
Yeah.
From really naughty stuff to, experimental, to all those things that kids need to do to learn a lot of things. because the potential is now that young people, I think they will be able, where they will be different from us is that they will be able to compute data very quickly and lots of short snapshots of data extremely fast. The thing that we will have over them is the ability to look at complex pieces of information and things that require longer attention spans. Their attention spans will be extremely low. Their interpersonal skills will be extremely low, and they. I think we read something yesterday, didn't we? That they're talking about the psychological impact of this amount of always-on technology.
Yeah.
That actually schools will need to incorporate downtime. They'll need to incorporate meditation and how to switch off. I mean, you've probably had this conversation talking about when you go on holiday, how you deal with your mobile and your email.
Well, we just don't take anything on holiday.
Yeah, a lot of people now
because it's a holiday from technology.
Holiday from technology. You need at least 3 days to get away from it.
I think as time goes on as well, people will care less and less about it as a problem.
It's that boiling the frog alive. It's starting to become the norm to see it and then they use it. Interestingly, there was some work from Cambridge that demonstrated that actually advertisement on something like Google was more likely to lead you to malicious software, like to infect your system, than the supposedly organic searches. And in actual fact, it was more likely if you got sponsored links at the top of the page, they were more likely than the ones down the right-hand side of the page. Because if you're a criminal, how better to get people to go to your website than use Google's good image and pay money to advertise. Costs a lot of money to produce the next copy of Windows, but the copy after that is free because it's just a price of stamping out another CD or DVD. So actually it's got very, very high upfront fixed costs, but then the cost to reproduce is incredibly low, if not negligible. So we're growing. This generation is growing up in an environment where information is free, right? Because it doesn't see the fixed cost of the development of that information. Now, if you put that into a school setting, and we're starting to see in higher educational settings, where we've got some universities who are giving away their courses for free, and then they're charging them £7,000 to sit the exam. Right, so then you go take that back to a school setting where you're supposed to go to school to learn things, learn that information, and that information is free to them effectively because it's just being reproduced. High fixed costs, probably covered by the state normally, which it is, and that has some really interesting effects on the people growing up because they're used to free information. But in some cases, that free information is given to them because they're trading part of their soul, their preferences, that type of stuff online. But our children are growing up in a world of free information, and the interesting thing is a lot of business models now are not based on the cost of the information; they're based on speed of access to information. So if you look at something like stock market websites, you pay £20 a month.
Millisecond trading.
Yeah, you get paid. You get 5-second delay, and you pay £100 a month, and you get it in real time. So it's not. One thing we've got to move. I think again in 2019, thinking about a digital troublemaker, is moving away from this idea that the information is of value. It costs them a lot of money to get hold of, and thinking about the speed of information or the disruption of that speed of information. There is also going into that the work that you've done in the digital disruption about working out the value of that information, how trustworthy that information is. So there's if you wanted to disrupt somebody, potentially one way of doing it is getting your information from there faster, but of a lower quality. Actually, some of the most disruptive people could potentially be those that don't fully understand the technology and get in the way. Those could be the most troublesome. We're very much focused on youth as maybe that's a sign of we're all getting old. But actually, some of the most troublesome people could be grannies that push in front of the bus queue.
Mm.
Certainly, they're going to be some of the most problematic to include socially in a new world digital order.
Yeah.
How do you solve a problem like Granny?
I guess that will be gone after that generation.
No, but we'll be that generation.
But have we already
digital
developed the sort of cognitive processes to deal with technology?
Yeah, but I like your assumption that there isn't going to be something else.
Yeah.
Right, just because they're growing up. I mean, I grew up with a VCR, right? I didn't grow up with mobile phones in my pockets.
Yeah, but that, I suppose it depends. There's always going to come a time where you just stop adopting more stuff and just go.
Yeah. Oh, I can't be bothered to. I've retired. Why do I need to learn this new technology?
Yeah.
But then you will have to get your pension or
Yeah.
or buy something. Yeah.
Certainly we it's foundations. We're laying down sediment, and VCR replication of information on magnetic media. That was one sediment. Now we've got mass digital transit. That's another sediment. What's the next sediment? Well, mass social media. That's going to be the next thing. But we're going to get to a stage where we are going to be the digital disruptors. We're going to be the troublemakers because we don't understand what the next generation is doing. We don't understand the technology. What was Microsoft's? Microsoft bought a Facebook, not MySpace is an example. But basically, when they got that, the parents went on it, and the kids left it in droves. And that's what basically did for MySpace, because actually the kids were the ones that post and generate and consume.
Yeah.
But I think the younger kids, something that I've seen on various sides of my family, the kids are about 12, have all been getting on Facebook and trying to befriend me, and I've just been not, responding, because it's kind of like, this is like the pub they want to get into. But I think that will change.
They want to be. Oh, that's weird. Yeah.
Yeah, no, because all their friends are. No, because all their friends are on Facebook.
Uncle Mark's on. Oh, no way.
No, I think it is the pub. We all wanted to get into the pub when we were 14, didn't
But
we?
there's interesting repercussions, because somebody I was talking to told me this story about how his wife befriended their babysitter on Facebook, and they were out. But she was supposed to be babysitting, and she was posting on Facebook, "Oh, this is really crappy. They've left me this, that, and the other." And she's sitting there in the pub with her husband reading these Facebook posts from their babysitter, and she didn't realise that the implications of the fact that now this person can see the fact that someone's been slagging off the fact that they've left these biscuits out again. It's
Isn't it amazing how stupid they are?
But that's the thing. People are
stupid. It was it's like the same thing with the riots, where they're posting their loot.
But they
just don't understand.
They haven't.
They really don't understand the bigger picture of it.
They haven't learned. There's a difference between somebody who's stupid, which is somebody who repeats the same actions over and over again after being informed, and there's somebody who hasn't learned. We are built to learn through physical feedback, and now we're moving into a digital world in which there is no tangible feedback. And certainly a lot of the tangible feedback doesn't come for a significant amount of time. So, you're talking of orders of days before potentially there could be...
I think there are some people that can project and understand.
Yes.
That there might be an implication of it being on a social network or not.
Yeah, but people...
It could be an age thing.
Yeah.
And it could also be the fact that they've learned about that they've taken the small steps. This is hot. I don't touch it again. I know that is like that, so that's probably going to be hot. I'm not going to touch it again, right? So one of the things for me is, how do you get that this is hot, at a very early age, and then what are the similar objects online, so they know that this is hot as well.
They could also just be trying to prove something to their peers and say, I know the consequences. I don't give a damn about it.
But that's the risk taker. That's the risk taker. That's the kid that jumps off the 6-foot wall.
Yeah.
Right? Because
I'd be surprised if that kid who posted the thing about Tom Daly didn't know that everyone's going to see that and everyone's going to really react to it. Just wanted some kind of form of attention.
Yes, but also there's the
but that's
the internet is very good at enabling spur of the moment poor decisions, right? And recording them indefinitely. Right, so that kid now is going to be online forever, having said that. And it's, what he's doing is he's probably a really cool kid at school, and he's probably really funny and witty, and he says really funny and witty things to put, the other kids down and all the rest of it, and everybody likes him, or pretends to like him because they don't want to be bullied by him or whatever. And now what he's done is he's done exactly the same behaviour, but he's done it online and done it to a global audience, but he didn't think of the implications of transferring it online because of its
didn't quite come
that kind of behaviour that transitional behaviour is quite interesting from a real world, in which when you say it goes to 5 people, people forget about it, and then in the online world, when you say it goes to billions of people.
And what trends might be. So, like the real world worker is one, it's very long with what you're saying then, and actually you're going to be sort of frowned upon a little bit when you're actually a worker. Like, why would you really be a worker in the real world when you could be an internet personality, when you could do something on YouTube, with all those companies out there that are trying to get, you can pay-per-click on for advertise on YouTube videos. There's people that are making something of themselves without leaving their house. So why would anyone go out and earn money the old way? One Face is another character, the guy that only has one identity, because I think that in 2019 everyone's got more than one identity, like we're starting to see now.
But
digital identity.
Just on that, the interesting thing is Anonymous have one identity for multiple individuals. So there's kind of, that is kind of an interesting concept there. The London riots, right? They would have happened if we didn't have BlackBerry communication, possibly. They just would have happened in a different way. It's just the fact that they were using Google Maps, tracking the police in real time much faster than the police could track themselves, and relaying those messages meant that those riots happened in a very specific way. And that just enabled that. But that wasn't the trigger. It was a social factor. It was social unrest. There was something that happened that popped the bubble, popped the balloon, and then lots of unrest. Nothing really related to the pin that popped it came pouring out, and then there was technology that enabled that to move it on. So it's this idea that actually a lot of the drivers are not technology drivers as such. You don't have Android has come along, and now all of a sudden everybody's going to be running around on one leg, or they can hop everywhere. That's not what happens generally.
But it seems to me, in terms of education, from when kids first start school up to when they're undergraduates, there's more and more information being generated about them. So, for example, like a third year who's graduating, when someone asks me for a reference, I can go back and see every tutorial they've ever attended since they were a first year, because we have it's all digital. And you will have a massive information similar to that going back to when they're 5 years old and they're being monitored, because there's so much kind of monitoring. So I'm interested, that is going to be the kind of social driver. But what could you do?
Well, let's turn it the other way around. Let's think, actually, we are so reliant as a society on that digital information for our careers. Okay. We are. The next generation coming through, if we take the point of view that we're scrapping the existing schooling system and moving to something much more flexible and focused on the individual, those records would change and actually maybe not necessarily be meaningful in any way. So what happens if a digital troublemaker decides to corrupt the record of all of our education and employment?
And it also,
what happens there?
The other element to this is, in terms of crime and terror, there's a big interest from government in terms of doing risk assessment of people at an increasingly young age. So to be able to predict, and this goes back to the stuff you're talking about, big data, to be able to predict, okay, this kid in this street with this family on this kind of income is likely to be trouble in 10 years' time, so let's intervene earlier. it's like preemptive. I mean, there's a government report on this called Building on Progress, Security, Crime and Justice, where it kind of has a section on crime and a section on terrorism, and the logic of preemption is the same. Right, so just as we need to take preemptive action against Iraq, we need to take preemptive action against problem families and intervene. And you can intervene because you've got the data now. So
yeah, and plus they'd put these kind of words on Facebook, or they may have done these kind of searches on Google, which means statistically they're more likely to do this crime because previous data.
Okay, so let's extend that, and so say with 2019 we've got a big data society. The government has perfected its capability to do data mining on its civilians, and it can predict down to street block problem communities.
And actually, police. There was a thing I saw on Twitter the other day about how police in Los Angeles are now using this kind of data to predict when crimes are going to occur, because you can basically and that's what it was talking about. Actually, in terms of,
what I would do if I was a young person is I would just want to erase all my data in that respect. Yeah?
Or alter
because
it.
You're going to be alter it to make yourself squeaky clean.
So
you're going to start altering your data. There'll be services that are search engines that are incognito. Everything will want to be like not related to a corporation that is complicit with government in collecting this information. Because things like much more advanced, but mobile phones have much more data actually on us than search engines do, because they know your location, so they'll know actually who you've been socialising with or meeting with or working with. So if that data is then released as well and all put together, they'll have such an incredible amount of info on you that everyone, actually the demand for product, for technological product and service will be, can you guarantee me that this service is anonymous, that it will cloak everything that I do, and it will not be added to a record that can then be used against me.
Because it'll be things like, all of us who've got kids have had visits from the social workers in the early stages. They have someone who comes to your house and writes up, I would imagine, a report that's on a database.
Like, what's he like?
And they do that. I mean, they're there to look at the environment that the kid's been brought up in. Now, if you're a kid who's got terrible parents and growing up in a really harsh environment, that's going to be on a report somewhere. Now, is that going to become part of a broader narrative? If you want a job in the police or something that's a bit, army officer, is that going to start? Are you going to start having in a highly competitive job market? Are you going to start worrying about how that narrative might then be used when you're being selected?
Completely, because there's obviously huge amounts of data that are going to be used for you and against you. Because, for example, the success of an entrepreneur can be measured by what their parents do. Because actually, you're much more likely to be entrepreneurial if your parents are entrepreneurial, because you've seen it and learned from what they talked about on a day-to-day basis. So actually, VCs might go, okay, let's look at their past, let's look at their parents, what they do. So statistically, your money is in safer hands. Or same in the job market. What's LinkedIn going to be doing?
People do silly things when they're young, and they want to kind of erase it.
You can almost do the same thing now. You can erase stuff, but you can also, beef stuff up. You can buy Twitter followers. You can do all sorts of things, that make you look.
I was just thinking about what happens if you get into a position where a group of people so they start spreading information about how to game the system. Already in social networks, we're seeing social networks being gamed, for want of a better expression, where people are buying Twitter followers, or Chris Moores does it pretty much every week, saying, right, I want to trend this hashtag, right? That's what I want to do, and within 2 hours it's globally trending. And it's that kind of, how can we game that system?
But maybe the solution is to go back to more traditional. Why do we depend so heavily on digital files about people? It's because it's cost effective. It's easy. It saves space.
And it's green.
And it's green, actually.
we don't
Yeah,
have to
yeah,
print
yeah.
paper.
But I think maybe it'd be a matter of like certain institutions and certain pieces of data will remain extremely clean, and others will be just completely untrustworthy.
Yeah. What would be clean though?
Well, for example, if your data on pupil records was not connected to the internet, it just sits alone in a server on the site of Lancaster. You know it's never going to be corrupted.
Yeah.
We
What
don't
do you
know
think?
Connected society.
But you can.
But that's let's see. The interesting thing is, again, we are falling into the trap of thinking about the technical system, not the socio-technical system. The technical system is only as good as the people that operate it. Right, okay, cleaners.
Yeah.
Lowest paid,
Yeah.
most disgruntled, have master keys.
Yeah.
Right? Here you go, here's 100 quid. Can you just plug this in the back of a computer for me? Right,
Yeah.
so, an interesting scenario about corrupting the big data is, we get a disaffected group who bribe the operators of the system.
They bribe the graduate radical who's hating his job. There's always going to be one in a. Yeah.
We bribe the graduate radical that is now a data entry person for the government who was promised by going through this degree he'd be a top flight X whatever it is, and now has spent the last 3 years basically changing tapes, the equivalent of backup tapes, whatever they are these days, on night shift, and is earning minimum wage.
Yeah.